thank y'all all for coming. I'm glad that we've got such a good turnout tonight. You may be wondering why I decided to talk about cemetery preservation. So if you were here last year whenever I spoke, you might remember that I mentioned that one of my goals was to encourage people to get involved with preserving our cemeteries. As I was putting things together for tonight, I considered some different ways that I could approach the topic, and finally I settled on that probably sharing my own experiences would be a good way to show that anybody really can get involved and make a difference. You just have to decide that it's something you want to do and to take action to do it. So first of all, what I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to tell you to go find somebody to do the work for you. It's not realistic or practical, and for the most part, there's not anybody to call to do this kind of work. Modern monument companies, they can go out and they can reset a modern gravestone, but very rarely do they actually have the proper knowledge to be able to handle historic gravestones. The care of our cemeteries is also not an issue that we can just throw money at. You may affect a short-term solution, but long-term care will continue to be a problem. We have to make people realize that we all share the responsibility of caring for our cemeteries. And most importantly, to ensure that it continues in the future, we must teach our younger generations. So, before we move on, I do want to point out that there are many different aspects of cemetery preservation, such as mapping, documentation, historic landscaping, and so on. But tonight, because we can't cover all of those topics in the amount of time that we have, we're just going to focus on preservation of the actual gravestones. So, how did I get started? I've had an interest in cemeteries for a long time. Every time I would visit a cemetery and I would see damage or neglect, I had the typical response of thinking what a shame it was. Eventually, I came to realize that maybe there was something that I could do about it. Maybe there was a way that I could make a difference. So I started looking for information. Today, we have access to a seemingly unlimited amount of information. You can learn about and teach yourself just about anything. You just have to make the decision to do it. That being said, with such a vast amount of information out there, there's also a lot of bad information. So we must be very careful to evaluate the reliability of our sources. You may be surprised to know that sometimes even preservation groups can be misinformed. So, back to how I actually got started. At the time, I was just a stay-at-home mom. Both of my children were involved in multiple activities. Our schedule was very full. In my spare time, I pursued learning about cemetery preservation. Then, in 2020, as we all know, COVID came along, and everything pretty much came to a halt. Our schedule was suddenly clear, and I saw the perfect opportunity to be able to do extra things like working in the cemetery. So I started out by contacting Shelley to see if it would be okay if I just removed dirt and grass from gravestones in the old section of the Minden Cemetery, just to keep them from being covered up and lost. So, with the help of my then 13-year-old daughter Aubrey, we began to do just that. And so you can see in these pictures, I think this is the very first one that we worked on. And so there you can see, really you couldn't even see that much at first, but I knew that it was there just from the amount of time that I had spent in the cemetery before this. So I knew it was there, and so I just kind of uncovered just a little bit just to be able to, so you could see it in a picture, you know, to see how covered up it was. And so then some other pictures through the process. We actually worked on this one for maybe 2 or 3 days, because the dirt on top, in this picture, you can kind of see how thick it was down on this end. It was several inches deep. Which this one it's on a slope, so of course, you know, the dirt, it washes across it very easily, and things can get covered up. So then, the more that we worked, the more that I really wanted to be able to do to try to make as big of a difference as we could. So that summer, we cleaned our first headstones. We started with our family, cleaning headstones of my great-grandparents, my second great-grandfather, and other family members. We continued until all of the local gravestones had been cleaned. So these are not the very first ones that we cleaned, but these were pictures that were really good examples of the difference it can make just with a simple cleaning. These are my third great-grandparents. So after we cleaned all of our local family headstones, we expanded our territory and we started cleaning family gravestones in other parishes. As of today, I have cleaned headstones in Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois, and intending to take a trip with my daddy to Tennessee. So last Monday, my husband Ben, Aubrey, and I, we traveled to Malvern, Arkansas area to view the eclipse. And while we were there, we took advantage of the opportunity to clean some more headstones. So Richmond, on there it says Richard, that was what they called him, but Richmond Robertson, that was my third great-grandfather. This is a son, Quincy, and his wife, daughter Mary, and another son, Tillman. So in about an hour, we cleaned these 4 headstones. And the bottom pictures, that's what they looked like whenever we left. You can see the darker areas on this one. That's just where it hadn't finished drying yet. But whenever it finished drying, it would have been just as light as the rest of it.
You're going to tell us what you used to
Yeah. Oh, hang on, let me go back.
How'd you get all that dirt off of that one?
I'm going the wrong way.
Did you use a shovel? That first one you showed.
What, in a hard one?
Oh, okay. No, because you don't want metal anywhere near.
How did you get all that dirt off?
So basically, a lot of it was grass with a thin layer of dirt. So I mean, we literally would just start with our hands, just pulling it back. We would, if we needed to scoop, we would very gently use like a little plastic trowel, and we would take dirt out. Now, kind of on the edges, once we knew exactly where the edge of the stone was, we would move a little bit farther away, and we would use a little metal shovel and kind of cut our edge with that. But only after we knew that we were nowhere near coming in contact with anything. But yeah, a lot of it by hands. Okay. So in April of 2021, I attended 2 different workshops. So one was at the Old Homer Cemetery. It was put on by the Louisiana Trust for Historic Preservation. It was strictly a headstone cleaning workshop. And you can see we had a pretty good turnout there. The bottom picture, it shows demonstrating cleaning. And then this is the one that I actually worked on and I cleaned that day. And it is a child's headstone. And I picked it in particular because of how bad it was. And it actually cleaned up really easily because so much of it was this moss and the lichens and things like that, that once you get it wet and you hit it with a soft brush, it just kind of falls off and it's gone. So it actually comes off a lot easier than you might would think. So then the other workshop that I went to, it was a cemetery preservation workshop conducted by Atlas Preservation as part of their 48-state tour. It was at the American Cemetery in Natchitoches, and that's me spraying some cleaner on one of the monuments there. So at this workshop, we learned how to clean and to repair gravestones. So here's some pictures showing kind of how the workshop worked. It was literally hands-on. You mixed the products that you use. You got to help reset stones and make the repairs. And then here's pictures of a larger one that was worked on. So the 2 men in this picture, they are the ones who were actually there to teach us. So this is John Apple with Atlas Preservation, and this is Jason Church with the National Center for Preservation Technology and Training. I always say it backwards. Let me find my place. So, okay, so I went to this, learned how to make repairs, but I didn't get started right away. Things, you know, by that time, some of the kids' activities had started back up, things were busy again. So several months went by, and in the fall of that year, probably late fall, is whenever I came back up here to the museum to talk to Shelley again, to find out if it was okay if I actually did some small repairs at the Minden Cemetery. So, the only real repair work that I've been able to do so far is on the Loy family plot. And so this is what it looked like. I believe this was October of 2022. So in this plot, you have the first wife of John Loy, and this is her headstone right here, and all 7 of his children. So John Loy, he was an immigrant from England, and he was a prominent citizen of Minden. His family story is very tragic. So he was married twice. The first wife, Susanna, died in childbirth at the age of 36. The baby also died and is buried with her. As I said, all 7 of the children are here. None of them lived past the age of 9. He remarried, which some of these children are with the first wife and some with the second wife, but he remarried to Mary Grace. She ended up committing suicide. Several years later, John Loy himself was found dead along the railroad tracks between Dubberly and Sibley. No burial place for John or Mary Grace has ever been found. This family has no descendants to care for their graves because obviously all of their children died. So this is the one that I worked on. We had several headstones, these 2, and the far one over here is a daughter. All of them were on the ground. You can see hers is broken. These 2 here, even though they were standing, their bases were buried in the ground completely, and they were kind of propped up against them. So this is what they looked like in March of 2023. And honestly, this is really not as difficult as it probably looks. I mean, probably the hardest part was digging up the bases and getting them out of the ground because, I mean, pretty much all these small ones, their bases had been buried. And I really kind of feel like they may have intentionally been buried. I don't think that that happened naturally. I think that probably whenever they were damaged, it was probably easier to bury them and then that way to make sure that they stayed there. So, like I said, these are the only ones that so far, because then I didn't have time to keep going out there. So these are the only ones that I have actually repaired. So I have made some attempts to try to get people involved. Like I said, that is the goal, is to get people to realize that the only way we can do things like this is to decide that we're going to do it and to educate ourselves and to get out there and do the work. In October of 2022, as part of our DAR National Day of Service, I organized a Veterans Headstone cleaning event at the Minden Cemetery. The public was invited, but we had very low participation. I think we cleaned 17 or 18 veterans headstones that day. So, you know, I try to do things. We don't really have people show up. And so then whenever somebody comes to me and they ask about things needing to be done in our cemeteries, I do tend to get a little bit frustrated. Every year we place flags on veterans' graves for both Memorial Day and Veterans Day. We put out over 300 flags. If we had about 20 people, it would go pretty quick. but I don't think we have ever had 20 people. And on multiple occasions, my own family has been stuck out there for hours at a time trying to get the flags out. There's been times I've thought about not doing it anymore because I kind of feel like if it's not important to the community, then, you know, it can make you feel like you're, not that you're being silly, but, you know, it can be frustrating. So, why is cemetery preservation important? So just like with the Loys, many of these graves, there's no descendants to take care of them. Our cemeteries are a cultural resource. We can learn about burial traditions, symbols, cultural and spiritual beliefs. The carvings on the gravestones, they are an art form to be appreciated. We can sometimes learn about the people from their inscriptions. Cemeteries record the history of a place. They are also a source of genealogical information. In the case of children, just like those Loy children, some of them, their grave is the only record that they ever existed. Cemeteries are accessible to all to study and learn, and they're a tool that we can use to relate our history. Caring for cemeteries is part of the cultural well-being of a community. We must teach our children to respect and care for cemeteries. When they do, they'll grow up with the desire to continue this important work. And of course, to be able to do anything, we do have to increase public awareness. So now I'm going to talk about a couple of our Minden cemeteries and their particular situations. They can be used as examples for cemeteries anywhere that can be facing similar circumstances. So we have the Fuller Merle Cemetery. It's located on Gladney next to Victory Park. So it is the burial place of the Fuller and Merle families. The Merles were among the earliest settlers in this part of the state. Isaac Merle is said to be the first child of European descent born in this area. In the 1940s, efforts began to construct a memorial shrine next to the cemetery to be used to house historical documents, but it was never completed. The cemetery is not owned or maintained by the city. In fact, there is no one officially tasked with caring for this particular cemetery. The primary need is regular maintenance in the form of mowing. So there's also other things that need to be done. So we have cleaned some of the headstones and haven't had a chance to go back and finish that work. There are several that need to be repaired. The fence needs to be repainted, but of course it needs to be done by the right standards. And this particular historical marker, it needs to be restored too. So then we have the Minden Cemetery. So it was started sometime in the early 1840s, and it is the burial place of many of the people who helped to establish and to develop Minden. There are 2 congressmen buried there, John N. Sandlin and John T. Watkins. The ancestors of Louisiana governors Robert Floyd Kennon and Mike Foster are buried there. There is a cemetery association, but this cemetery is extremely large. There are over 4,000 people that are buried there. And it is extremely expensive just to be able to keep the grass mowed in such a large cemetery. So, needs for it, obviously there are headstones that need to be cleaned and repaired, plots that need to be restored because some of their decorative features have been covered. We need to identify lost stones, unmarked plots, and we need to address any of the stones that are being overtaken by vegetation. So, what can we do? We can educate ourselves, we can volunteer and get involved, we can be willing to get dirty and work hard because you do get dirty and you sweat a lot. And then, and just basically get to work doing the cleaning and the repairing. So before you get started, you must have permission. So you are allowed to clean family headstones, but you must have permission from the family or cemetery for anything else. We always want to do no harm, and our goal is preservation. Never ever use bleach, household cleaners, pressure washers, or power tools. Nothing that is harsh or could cause any harm to the stones. So again, permission is required before you can do anything. And again, you can care for the graves of your family. And obviously, perpetual care cemeteries, there's always going to be rules and regulations in place there. Do no harm. Again, that is the thing that should drive all of our decisions. We always want to do no harm. Otherwise, there's no reason for us to be out there, and really should not be out there. Focus on preservation. The goal is always to protect, preserve, and care for a cemetery. Anything that does not accomplish this goal is not allowed. And then we must be educated. So no one who has not had, any kind of training, or they have not sought out any information about what to do, should never perform any kind of work in a cemetery, and should never be allowed to do any kind of work in a cemetery. They do need to be trained. They need to know correct methods, correct materials that can be used. And, there's plenty of people that may not be able to do the work themselves, but, if you serve on a cemetery board or are in charge of any kind of work being done in a cemetery, it's helpful to know all of this information so that you can be sure that your volunteers are doing what they should and not what they shouldn't. Okay, so the question was asked about what to use. So I have a bottle here. It is D2 biological solution. There are a few other things that can be used, but this is the most straightforward thing, and so this is what we're going to talk about. And it's extremely easy. So, as you can see, the first option, you can literally just spray a stone with that D2 and you can walk away from it and never do anything else. So its job is to kill the biological material that is on those stones. And that is what our goal is to kill that, because so much of the discoloration that you see, that's what it's from. It's from these biological materials that are living on and within those stones. And this will kill it without causing any harm. The other option, and this is what I do, and you do get a more immediate result, but you can spray the stone with the D2. You let it sit for a few minutes. You scrub gently with a soft brush. So this would be just a very soft brush. And then you just rinse it. And that's it. D2 cannot be purchased in stores. You do have to order it. I order mine from Atlas Preservation.
So it is environmental.
Yeah, so D2 is the only product that has undergone all of the necessary testing to make sure that it's not going to cause any harm at all.
To any of the vegetation or anything around.
Right. Yeah. So there are some people that use wet and forget, and they will tell you that it is fine. And a lot of them like it because it's easy to go to the store and get it, and it's cheaper. Last time I bought this, the D2, I think it was maybe about $20 for a bottle that size, but you would be surprised how many headstones you're going to clean with that bottle.
Dilute it?
You can dilute it. Some people do dilute it, but I don't. I use it straight. But you're still going to clean, I would say minimum, unless you're cleaning something really large, I'd say minimum of like 15 headstones with a bottle. But of course, like I say, if you're doing something larger, then it's going to differ.
$1 a stone.
Yeah. It's really not bad. But the thing with wet and forget, so people justify using it because it is approved for use in national cemeteries, and they do use it in national cemeteries. But the thing that they're not stopping to consider is that it has been approved by the government for use in those specific cemeteries on government-issued veterans' headstones. They have never said it is approved for use on all headstones. The other thing is they maintain those headstones. If they become damaged and they need to be replaced, they will be replaced. That's not true of the rest of our headstones. So until Wet and Forget has undergone the same testing as D2 to make sure that it is safe, we do not recommend using it. Okay. So, repairing headstones. I've repeatedly said that I will never, ever, ever teach anybody to repair headstone. First of all, I'm not qualified. I am not a cemetery preservation professional. Also, I will not take on the responsibility of somebody taking something that I said and then they go and do something that causes damage. And, you know, I would feel awful. I would feel like that was my fault. So I won't do that. But I will share how anyone who is interested can learn. And one way is one of the ways that I did. So the 48 state tour that I attended in Natchitoches in 2021, the schedule has been announced for this year's tour. I have recommended, or not recommended, but I have nominated the Minden Cemetery twice. So far, we have not made the cut. But on June 17th, they will be back in Natchitoches at Jackson Square Cemetery. And so anyone who is interested has that same opportunity to go to this workshop and to get hands-on experience from a renowned cemetery preservationist. So John Apple, he actually is the man who did the work on the Knight's Tomb at Jamestown, which is believed to be the oldest headstone in the country. So he knows his stuff. And I'm kind of hoping that it'll be like it was in 2021, and we will also have Jason Church there from the National Center for Preservation, Technology, and Training. So you have the opportunity to learn from two very skilled people in cemetery preservation. Okay, find my place again. So many of our cemeteries are obviously in need of care that goes beyond the basic maintenance. Many organizations that take care of cemeteries, it's all that they can do to take care of those basic things. In order for us to provide that care, we've got to get people that want to be involved and that are willing to educate themselves and to get out there and actually do the work. I would really love to think that one day that there would be as much enthusiasm for taking care of our cemeteries than whenever I hear people talk about the ghost walks that we once had at the Minden Cemetery. People get really excited about that, but it's kind of, like an entertainment point of view and not concern for the cemetery itself. So, I do hope that the information that I have provided, that it's been helpful. I hope that it does illustrate that anybody can get involved, can learn how to do these things. Basically, you really just have to want to. So, some things that I have used to learn. There is a book, this book here, a graveyard preservation primer. Has a lot of information in it, and it's cleaning, it's documenting, it's anything that you can think of that has to do with preserving a cemetery. There is information in there about that. Cemetery Conservators for United Standards. They have a website that has a lot of information on it, and again, they cover different aspects. The National Center for Preservation, Technology, and Training, they also have a lot of information that is available online. And then, of course, Atlas Preservation and their 48-state tour. So, in conclusion, I do want to share this quote. It comes from the New Orleans Weekly Delta in February of 1850 in reference to Minden. And it says, "The character of a people, I think, may be read from a visit to their cemetery. There is more taste displayed and respect paid the departed here than at any other place in Louisiana, New Orleans excepted. The cemetery in Shreveport is in keeping with the reckless character of the citizens. So, I do think that having the most well-cared-for cemeteries in the state may be a lofty goal, but I do think it's one that's worth aspiring to. So, does anybody have any questions?
I'd just like to say, I went to one of the workshops, it was 22, and it was a most enjoyable day. It was hot, but it was a cemetery that had lots of trees, and it was just a wonderful day.
Yeah, it is. It's a really enjoyable experience. I mean, not even just educational, but you really do just enjoy it.
So for my TAR members course project, I cleaned the headstones of this book grave by my driveway in Tennessee. The members course told the videos had to use biocide.
Well, that is a biocide.
That's what that is.
Yeah.
And I did use a soft brush.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was amazing.
I was told that Dawn liquid detergent.
Nope. Lots of people think that there's lots of things that we can use. And there's lots of people that think that those pressure washers are good ideas, and they're not. So a lot of products, the stones are more absorbent than we realize, and they are really going to suck up whatever you put on them, and then it's going to hold that in there. And so much of, there's so many things that once it gets in there, it's going to start to basically break that stone down from the inside. And so, yeah, it will. Over time, you're not going to see like an immediate change. It will take time, but it's going to deteriorate faster than it would have normally.
What about these headstones that have the, I don't know if it's brass or not, but it has a metal?
The bronze.
The bronze.
It's a little bit different. You actually, people that work on those, it's a wire brush, and but you're just brushing the tops, to get that to get that bronze back to that shiny, and then
They also have other products for different types stones.
Right. Yeah. Personally, I kind of like the bronze stones, how they just naturally age. I've cleaned some just to get all the dirt and the grime and the whatever off of them, but yeah, I kind of like just the natural, the way that they would age anyway.
On your pictures there, you have the new modern gray, and it has a dark spot on it. Is that the D2 that would go back to your first set of pictures, not the old ones?
Some of it was wet.
Yeah.
It's wet.
Wet? No, go back. Let's
Okay.
see.
Hang on. Which way? Am I still going towards the beginning? Okay.
I think she's talking about the heart-shaped one.
There.
Okay.
See how that?
Yeah. So like this one.
That's the way my parent and my grandparents are doing. Now, would I use that? Spray it up? Okay.
Yeah. And you can just spray it and walk away and let it do its thing.
The rain will take care of it.
Yeah, and you can come back, you can watch it like over the course of the next weeks and months. It just gets better and better. And that's true whether you just spray it and walk away, or if you were to scrub it, yeah, it will.
We have a
It's,
shoe brush that looks just like that.
yeah.
That's a good soft brush. Okay.
One thing that's really important too, as far as cemetery preservation and upkeep, is that a lot of these cemeteries have no funding. And the reason they don't have any funding is because the people's families have not gone to the association or to the church that handles the upkeep and given them your name, your kids' names, your family names, so that every year you can get those little cards in the mail that say, please send us some money. Also, you can leave a cemetery in your will. That's very important. They can't operate without money. Everybody says, oh, the one in Homer is beautiful. You know why? They got over $1 million in their account. They've got people that kept, I mean, the Minden Cemetery Association's been around for a long time, but somewhere in what year was it, they decided they had too much money and stopped asking for money. And
started over.
and, you know, they don't ask for money. And I know one year, I think Jessica was already here when I was out beating the bushes trying to find people that were buried under trees, because the trees were falling and taking out half the graves. I know the Stewart family, I think Thad helped trim a tree. I hit Mike Harper up. Anybody I thought was still walking.
Well, who's head of the Minden? Is it still Ty Pendergrass?
It's Ty Pendergrass, but it's me, it's Jessica, it's Richard, it's Mike. Didn't we get you on there? You're on there now. And like I said, I knew Jessica was perfect for this job because she came in asking about the cemetery. Anybody that had any interest in that cemetery was the right person for this job. And so it's not, you know, it's not her responsibility to get out there and clean. She just loves doing it. But everybody should care about where their people are buried. And everybody should think about how much money it takes. It used to take $1,500 a mowing for the Minden Cemetery. So when I used to do the ghost walk, it made about $1,500. So it was one mowing. One mowing.
And what about spraying Roundup? Like,
Oh, yeah, no Roundup, no. But it falls into the same category as keeping chemicals away. And even, I mean, some people think, well, you can just spray it where you don't actually get it directly on the stone. It's still going to leach it out of the ground.
Yeah.
So no Roundup at all. Nothing like that, nothing.
what do you do about ants?
Ants are always a problem. And that, I honestly don't know, but they do tend to be a big problem in cemeteries. And that's like whenever I was out there pulling grass and dirt off of stuff, I would get eaten up by ants all the time.
Like ant killer on the ant bed, on the ant hills?
I mean, a lot of the time they like to get on the stones themselves. I wouldn't do it on the stone. Like maybe get all of that off and run them off and maybe, you know,
And spray them.
maybe, I don't know. I can't answer that question. But definitely not if it's on there or if it's next to something. I definitely wouldn't.
If they're fire ants, there's an organic solution. You can mix molasses and water and pour them on them, and that'll drive them away immediately. So that's
Yeah.
non-toxic.
And then still just being careful to make sure that they're not, yeah.
It's just molasses.
Yeah,
Molasses and water?
Molasses and water.
yeah.
They'll move from one spot to another.
Just pour it on their own, and they'll go away.
Yeah.
I was at Family Cemetery this summer and noticed that one of my relatives, it was a white stone, it used to have black letters on it, and now all the black is gone. So it's like, we looked for a long time before we found it because you couldn't read it. You just kept walking past it. Is that something that you can restore as well, or?
People do. I mean, there are places where they do tend, I mean, like, you know, these are not painted. I mean, that's just shadow that makes them look darker. But, you know, there are, and I think it kind of tends to be more prevalent in different places. But, I mean, there are plenty that the letters are painted, and I know that people do restore those. And a lot of the time,
Cemeteries in Illinois, so they get
Yeah.
totally different weather.
yeah, yeah. And I would think a lot of the time, those, at least the ones I see, tend to be a little bit more modern and they're granite, and so that may be a little bit of a different, but I can't really answer that question. But I do know that people do restore the painted letters. I do know that.
How long does this solution typically keep the blacking and all off of it?
I mean, just, it'll keep it gone until anything starts growing again. But, you know, I mean, to maintain,
Something you have to do annually?
no, you would definitely not have to do it annually. Actually, I kind of wish that I had done, like, my daddy's back there in the corner, and he was asking me, some of the headstones that we cleaned in Missouri, they were just back up there. They actually went to Illinois for the eclipse. And anyway, so he had sent me some updated pictures of some of what we had cleaned, and he was asking me, did I happen to have one of them in particular, what it looks like now as opposed to what it looked like before we cleaned it, because that would show, you know, a longer time span as far as how it's held up. It looks wonderful. And it's been, has it been 2 years?
Couple years.
Yeah, it's been at least 2 years, and it looks great. There are people that say they'll go and respray, you know, and that's just the spray it and walk away. They'll do it annually. It's really not necessary. Now, if it's under a tree, because those trees, as beautiful as they are, they're awful. They're awful for the fact that you are going to have more biological growth. They're awful because you're always going to worry that a limb's going to fall out and break something, or the thing's going to blow over and tear everything up, or, you know. But generally, if you don't have anything encouraging that biological growth, I mean, they're going to stay looking really good for an extended amount of time. And then you can just go and just give them a little spray and leave them alone. Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Okay. Well, I think that's all I've got. So if y'all don't have any other questions or anything else you'd like to discuss, thank y'all for